Wells from the Army War College. In the latter half of the last century, we entered into several mutual defense treaties that were largely established on the pretext of using and leveraging large land forces, Philippines, Japan, Thailand, and others. So, in this century, should the Army still endeavor to fulfill those treaty responsibilities with primarily land power, or should we also shift the emphasis for U.S. power to air and sea capabilities in those areas?
Well, as I said, I think with regard to Korea, you're talking about a potential land war involving South and North Korea. And I think the United States should keep ground forces in South Korea, largely for extended deterrence purposes. But the fact is, the South Koreans can now defend themselves. I mean, I've looked at the military balance between North and South Korea. I've looked at the geography. You look at the Uijeongbu corridor and you know how well defended that is. The North Koreans are not going to overrun South Korea. It's going to be exactly the opposite. The South Koreans are going to clobber the North Koreans. We're not needed in any meaningful way, right? So I think we should think about a conventional war involving American forces in Korea, but it's not going to be 1950-53. With regard to the Philippines, I think to the extent that the Philippines are going to get into a conflict, it's going to be over the South China Sea. As you know, the Filipinos and the Chinese have been barking at each other over the South China Sea in recent months, and probably get worse over time. But it's not going to involve a major land war where the United States gets involved. And you know, in places like Southeast Asia, I was in the American military from 1965 to 1975, and I learned one thing very clearly: you want to stay out of land wars in Southeast Asia. So I don't think we're going to build military forces to go fight in places like that. I just don't see. I mean, I may be wrong, and somebody may have a story out here that shows me I'm wrong, and I'm willing to be convinced otherwise, but I don't see where the Army has a really big role to play in Asia. Places like Europe, places like the Persian Gulf, you can tell a very different story. There's a question here from Major David Tier at the Marshall Center. Do you think targeted killings with drones and special operation forces will resolve the underlying problems in unstable countries, particularly in the Middle East, that have produced the national security challenges we have faced in the last 10 years? The answer is very simply no. Because to fix those problems would require nation building. You'd have to make fundamental changes in those countries to resolve the underlying problems. When you think about that phrase, resolve the underlying problems, you're talking about fundamental change